Hello, and welcome to another Two Honest Guys video. I'm James, that cheeky little bastard right there, and today I'll be taking you on an abridged journey through the history of the Tomb Raider franchise. We start in the early 90s when Tomb Raider was in its infancy, the days when the name Lara Croft wasn't even known to the developers of the game. Lara Croft all started as an idea that was essentially an Indiana Jones ripoff, an adventurer travelling around the globe, stealing ancient treasures, making trouble for locals, and getting up to all kinds of crazy shenanigans. Unsurprisingly, the developers were kind of worried that if they made their protagonist a man, people would cotton on to the idea that this was actually just an indie clone in video game form. So the sly bastards changed the gender, gave her a gun, and Lara Croft was born. After faffing about with names and dodging copyright, Tomb Raider was released in 1996. People loved this game, selling over 7 million units. They loved the gameplay, they loved the environments, but most of all, they loved Lara Croft. Her tough-as-balls persona took the game from some indie ripoff to a cult classic. The fact that she was a woman obviously stood out in this era of male-centric gaming, although not everyone loved her. Dodgy marketing choices led to some controversy amongst gamers, developers, and feminists alike, but that wasn't going to stop Lara. After Tomb Raider the first Tomb Raider, we got the creatively titled Tomb Raider 2, or to give the game its official title, the game with that creepy-ass butler. Another hit-turned-cult classic, the game sold 8 million units and was generally considered to be superior to the first. After the success of Tomb Raider 2, they spat out Tomb Raider 3 really quickly, the developers basically setting out to milk the Lara Croft cow until it was dead. Spoiler alert, they succeeded. Tomb Raider 3 wasn't a flop, but it was already showing signs of fatigue. It sold 6.5 million copies and the reviews were mostly good, but it lagged behind the first two. But that didn't really matter, it achieved what all publishers care about, a tidy little profit. With the Lara hype train still very much on the tracks, they released a load of special editions of the first three titles, games that were essentially mini-expansions. When Tomb Raider The Last Revelation was released in 1999, it technically became the 6th title in the series to be released in the space of just 3 years. 5 million games were sold, which again was good, but a clear sign of a quickly disengaging audience. But who the f*** cares when you're still printing money, right? Immediately, they greenlit another project, and a year later, they churned out another game. Here, ladies and gentlemen, begins the death spiral of Lara Croft. Given the shit the studio was pulling, pumping out games faster than the internet creates new memes, it wasn't exactly surprising that Tomb Raider Chronicles wasn't that well received. Common complaints were that it was boring, it was lazy, and it was so badly outdated. People could tell this game was just made for the dollar. It only sold 1.5 million copies, telling the developers that people had just had enough. But things were about to get better. And by better, I mean much, much worse. Enter Angelina Jolie and the Tomb Raider movies. The first film did pretty well, sort of. It was panned critically, of course, because it was a pile of dog, but it did crush it at the box office, which obviously meant that we were going to get another movie. In 2003, Tomb Raider fans were treated to a new movie and the return of Croft on consoles, in the form of Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness. Both were f***ing disasters. The game developers blamed poor quality movies for tarnishing Tomb Raider's brand, but the movie studios blamed the developers for putting out shoddy games and ruining the character of Lara Croft, so apparently no one was at fault, or everyone was at fault. This was when Tomb Raider really hit rock bottom. Tomb Raider movies were canned, and the games moved to a new developer. 3 years passed until we saw Lara return, in 2006's Tomb Raider Legend. The game sold nearly 5 million units, got rave reviews, and basically brought the franchise back from the dead. Very, very briefly. 2 years later, giving themselves more time than the earlier years, Tomb Raider Underworld was released. It was fine, but it wasn't quite as well received and only sold 2.5 million units. It was clear that Tomb Raider was just not a series people cared about anymore. This realisation brought with it the greatest Croft drought in history. 5 long Croftless years. In 2009, Tomb Raider was acquired by Square Enix. Here we had some more faffing about, presumably getting new computers set up, and it wasn't until 2011 at E3 that the new game was teased. Tomb Raider, the new Tomb Raider, was set to be the rebirth of the franchise. It did away entirely with the sexualised nature of the character and presented a rough and gritty reboot. Essentially, they Christopher Nolan the shit out of the franchise. Released in 2013, initially the game sold poorly. The hype around Tomb Raider had faded a long time ago, and people really didn't seem that bothered by the new game. After launch, it languished on 2.5 million sales, and the company expected to make a loss. But the reviews were amazing. People loved it, just nobody bothered to buy it. Word of mouth really changed the misfortunes of this game. The accolades and impressive reviews slowly meant that more buyers poured in, and eventually the game became the best-selling ever in the franchise history, with 8.5 million units. With a bit of confidence in the Tomb Raider series, Rise of the Tomb Raider followed 2 years later. Again, it was well received but sold poorly, although sales slowly started to tot up after people realised the first game wasn't a complete fluke. It currently sits on about 7 million sales. Recently, after much speculation and some bloke in Montreal ruining the title of the game back in 2016, a sequel to Rise was announced, dubbed Shadow of the Tomb Raider. The game is set to continue Lara's new story, the final part in this reboot trilogy. We know very little about the game right now, but what we can assume is it will be very similar to the first two, both in terms of gameplay and plot. With E3 2018 around the corner, we'll probably learn more about Shadow very soon. Between now and then, we have yet another movie, which we really hope continues the success of the new games. And that, my friends, is that, an abridged but complete history of the Tomb Raider. If you like this video, there'll be more content along at some point, I assume. Apparently there's some way you can sign up and get notifications on YouTube about new videos from channels, but I don't know, it kind of sounds weird to me.